Welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Here's your host, the Bitcoin Boomer himself, Gary Leland.
Hello and welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I'm Gary Leland, your host, also known as the Bitcoin Boomer. I think I was the first person to actually call myself the Bitcoin Boomer. We have a lot of Bitcoin boomers now. It's kind of funny. Whenever I go to a convention, like next week, I'll be in Miami at the Miami Bitcoin Convention. It's the world's largest Bitcoin convention. I think they had 30,000 people there last year. People always are coming up to me, old people my age, I'll call myself old, and they'll go, "Hey, Gary, I'm a Bitcoin boomer too." And so, like, it's not obvious. They're old and they're at a Bitcoin convention. But it's kind of cool that so many people are excited about being Bitcoin boomers now. Now, on today's show, we have Jon West. Jon runs the local Bitcoin Meetup group in McKinney, which is a great meetup group. I want to recommend that to anyone who wants to go socialize and talk about Bitcoin. But he also is a Bitcoin and blockchain consultant for Fortune 1000 companies. So he really has been into Bitcoin a long time, working with these companies to teach them about Bitcoin and teach them about blockchain. Now, this is the third season for our show, and I think our best season yet. We're off to a great start, and I think you're really going to enjoy today's guest. He's a local. We have him in studio. That's kind of unusual for us. I think like I said, this is our third season, and I think he's only the second person I've ever invited to the studio. So I don't know if that means I just like him or if he was just close by and I wanted him to come in. But you're going to enjoy Jon. Now, I do want to make sure you know we are just trying to teach you about Bitcoin here. That's all we want to do is teach you about Bitcoin. I'm not going to come up with some commercial later saying, buy your Bitcoin from me. I'm not even going to tell you where to go buy Bitcoin at. Okay, because that's not my goal here. You can find that out on your own. I just want you to know what Bitcoin is, what I think the future of the Bitcoin is, and what many other people think the future is, and what Bitcoin can do for you. Now, we're going to ask Jon questions basically about that. He's going to give his opinions. These opinions on the show are just our opinions. Neither one of us are claiming to be financial advisors. We're not trying to advise you what to do, but if something happens and you think you need to get into Bitcoin or start buying Bitcoin, maybe, just maybe, I will have helped you out and you will be a little bit ahead of the game that you'll actually already know what Bitcoin is. Or maybe if you're just at your office and someone's talking about Bitcoin, now you can get involved in the conversation and exactly know what you're talking about instead of just depending on rumors. So we'll be right back with Jon talking about Bitcoin, ordinals, flaring, lots of stuff going on right after this word from our sponsors. So stay tuned and share this show with your friends. See you in a minute.
I love coming to BitBlockBoom because it's like Mecca for Bitcoiners. Like, everybody here is like part of the hardcore like inner sanctum. You just have these conversations with everybody where like you can see it in their eyes that they believe the same things that you believe.
You come to BitBlockBoom once, you're going to come every year. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I'm your host, Gary Leland, also known as the Bitcoin Boomer. Now, this show, as I said earlier, is not for boomers. I just happen to be a boomer. But we do talk about Bitcoin, so if you're interested in Bitcoin, you're at the right place. And today we're joined by Jon West, of the McKinney, founder of the McKinney Bitcoin Group, and a Bitcoin blockchain consultant, and many more things, which we'll get into on the show. Jon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Gary. It is an honor to be with the Bitcoin Boomer.
The Bitcoin Boomer. You've got to be pretty close to a boomer yourself there.
I am. But it's also an honor to be with the guy that runs the best Bitcoin conference in the world.
So. Well, I appreciate those kind of words for sure. That's something I enjoy doing. If you're not familiar with it, I run the the BitBlockBoom Bitcoin conference. We'll talk about that when we wrap up the show later. But Jon, before we go any further, why don't you just give everybody a short bio about who is Jon West?
Yep. So I started a career as a software engineer, computer science major. Did a lot of programming in my life, but I essentially spent half of my career creating software for lawyers and the other half creating software for accountants. And late in my career, I volunteered at a big company and I said, hey, I'll dig into this, blockchain crypto stuff if you want. And that was back in 2016. And they said, sure. And so I led blockchain crypto R&D for a large company for a while, which 3 years, they essentially let me they trained me, and then I went independent and started consulting in the space. And so now I consult in the Bitcoin space. I advise. My wife and I started McKinney Bitcoin, and I'm working on some Web 5 stuff. So.
Well, your McKinney Bitcoin, that's a pretty good meetup group you have out there. You have a lot of people at that. I go like once a year. That's a long drive for me.
Yeah, it is.
But you have a really good group, and it's really, my meetup groups are just like, let's hang out and drink a beer. Where yours is like you can hang out, drink a beer, and learn something at the same time, maybe, because you do bring in people to talk. So I guess your orange pill moment really had to do with why you were getting paid to learn about Bitcoin. Since 2016, you discovered blockchain. They paid you for 3 years. It's 2019.
Yeah, my orange pill moment actually happened before that. It's funny because my Bitcoin story starts with the 2008 financial crisis. So when that happened, I was like, something is wrong. Something is broken. This shouldn't have happened. I had no clue what it was. And I had zero confidence that we could manage wealth long term if I didn't learn what happened. And so I started going down all sorts of rabbit holes: interest rates, central banks, inflation, how governments function, the global financial system. And it brought me to Bitcoin pretty early in 2010. But I poo-pooed it for 5 years. Said, never work. Kind of always looking at it. People telling me, John, you got to look at Bitcoin. You got to look at Bitcoin. Look at it every once in a while. And finally, in 2015, I was like, oh yeah, this is it. Went down the rabbit hole. And then I volunteered at work. Hey, I'll dig into this stuff. And then, that's where
so it was something you were interested in now at this point. So you're going, hey, if I can get paid to do this. Most people don't discover Bitcoin the way you discovered Bitcoin. Most people, it seems to me that I asked that question to discover Bitcoin. Someone pointed them that way, or they saw something, and then they read about it, and they said, oh, this makes sense to me, where you were researching the financial crisis, more or less, or finances, or our economy, or however you want to put it, and then you discovered.
And part of the reason it took me a while, too, probably was because I became a gold bug.
I imagine if you're a gold bug, you still have some gold.
I do.
Yeah, of course. Which has done pretty good lately, at least in the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's still disappointing though. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Well, I think that has something to do with paper ETFs probably more than anything else. There's probably more paper ETFs than there are gold on the planet.
What is it? It's 100 times, 150 times as much paper gold is traded versus real gold, or 50 times. It's huge.
Yeah. So will that happen to Bitcoin?
It does happen to Bitcoin with Bitcoin futures.
Yeah, CME.
Already. Lynn Alden will say, I think when she tweets, it sure looks to me like she says, the daily price of Bitcoin is kind of set by Bitcoin futures. That's what drives the price. Even Caitlin Long, I think, will say that. You'll see her tweet that sometimes.
Well, I know whenever there's a CME gap, it seems to always come down and fill that gap.
Is it?
I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Someone noticed it. So it's going to happen now because everybody knows it's supposed to happen. So everybody goes, okay, it's going to drop. Fill that gap, so let's sell. That's the way I feel about technical advisors I see on TV sometimes. That they have these charts and they have the Bart Simpson or the coffee cup handle or all these different charts, and they all use the same thought pattern. So when they see this chart, even though the chart might not mean anything, they all believe that it means something. So they self-fulfill the chart and they go, oh, this means Bitcoin's going to really go through the roof. We've got a big Bart Simpson. I know I'm saying the wrong chart signals. And all of a sudden they start buying because they all saw this thing that they all were told was good,
Yeah, I've followed a lot of technical traders. I actually think the opposite is true, is that when a pattern gets really popular, it stops working because too many people are following it. So then the buyer and seller things just overcome the chart pattern. But I also think there in these technical trading things, there's a lot of, it's like pi and mathematics and the Fibonacci sequence, stuff that you find in nature. That's what's in a lot of these technical trading patterns. It's these mathematical formulas that are in nature. And I think there's a link there. And that's why they work.
Fibonacci numbers.
Yeah.
That's been around a long, long, long time. Since you brought it up, can you just tell me what a Fibonacci number is?
Well, there's.
I know this may not be the perfect thing catching on guard here, but
You mean just the Fibonacci sequence?
Yeah.
What is it? It's the first number plus the second number equals the next number equals the next number. So it's but I don't know. I can't explain to you where it came from or the relevance of it. I just know that it exists, and it exists in this pattern, or these relationships of numbers also exist in nature. When you look at the size of things, the size of things follows the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah, so it's weird. The Fibonacci number is 1 + 2 + 3 = 3. That's a Fibonacci number.
Yep.
And then 3 + 4 = 7. I guess that's a Fibonacci number. Is that right?
I don't know. Sure.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. But people use that when they're deciding, when they're charting Bitcoin.
Yep.
So I don't know how that even makes any sense to me, but they all believe it. Getting back to my thing, that it means something, so it does.
Yeah, but the Fibonacci sequence actually kind of was discovered that it existed in nature.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the nature part of it.
Yeah.
So I'm not familiar with that part of it. So how does it happen in nature?
The way things grow, the way things are sized, they follow that Fibonacci sequence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's kind of hard to believe.
I know, but it is true.
I'll take your word on it. I'll take your word on that. So you've been into Bitcoin for quite a while now. So you got in at a good time, even if you didn't get in when you first discovered it. You still didn't get into it late. But I saw the other day, even people who bought Bitcoin at $60,000 or almost $70,000 at its high, if they bought Bitcoin on dollar cost averaging, they're ahead right now. And that was quite a drop from 70 or almost
to 16.
Yeah.
I agree. I've talked to speaking of trading, I run into a lot of Bitcoin traders. They've always admitted that they cannot beat, their trading cannot beat the buy and hold approach to Bitcoin.
Oh.
Because they say, and this has been published a lot too, is that when Bitcoin rips, the concentration of the rip is in a small number of days. And the traders are never in position. Because the traders are always, when something rips, either they get in immediately, but if they don't, they're waiting for a pullback. And the pullback never comes when Bitcoin rips. And so they miss out on the big rips. But he said the reason that he trades is it's how they make a living. So they're trading other people's money. And he said people can't stomach the volatility.
Well, that's a really good point, because you're right. There are a certain number of days that Bitcoin does all its business for the year. And we'll get into that when we come back from this word from our sponsor. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I'm your host, Gary Leland, joined today by Jon West. Local guy here. You're like the second person we've had in the studio. And of course, the other one was a local guy too. But we don't have many people in the studio here, so this is a new thing for us. Before we went to the commercial, we were talking about traders. You were stating that many traders get paid to trade, so that's how they make their money, but actually admit that if they were just dollar cost averaging, buying on a regular basis, as Bitcoin goes up and down, they make more money long term. I think that's kind of why most Bitcoiners are hodlers. They just hold it because they know if they hold it, they'll do better. And I think that's a perfect example, what I was saying earlier, about if you bought it at the all-time high of 69,000, you kept buying on a regular basis, you would be ahead of the game right now.
Yep, that's true. And even, it hasn't been 4 years yet, but even if you bought everything at an all-time high and you hold for 4 years, you're always ahead with Bitcoin. We just have to wait from the last all-time high for 4 years to see if that.
Yeah, because I remember that happened last time.
Yes.
Because the last time it went to 19 and then dropped it down to 3,500 or something. Yeah. And then it got to be a point again when everybody who ever bought
within 4 years,
was ahead of the game.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was a point where everybody bought within a day. Because when it hit 60, everybody who'd bought from the day before for the last 12 years was up.
Yeah.
So that's a good point about Bitcoin pricing. If you just hold on, I think it would be hard to, I know people do it for a living, but since it's a 24-hour market, 7 days a week, I think it's a little different than trading other things. I don't know. I'm not a trader.
I think it's a lot different because day traders are on, 8 hours a day when the market is open a lot of times. And if they take a time off, they go flat in the market. And with something that trades 24/7, that's a lot harder to do. You could still go flat, but they always feel like they're missing out.
Right.
But yeah, I'm guessing that's what they do. It's like, okay, here's my trading hours. I'm trading then, but then I have to go flat after my trading hours, and I just have to ignore what happens.
Some sell points in there that Bitcoin drops to so much money we're getting out of it. I don't know, but
yeah, they could. But a lot of times when you put those stop losses in the market, people see. Well, they can see them and they'll trip them.
Just to cause just to kill you and your money. Yeah. People do that. Yeah. Do you think, kind of on a different subject, with FTX, that was a huge scam, first of all. And I also think if it hadn't been for FTX, Bitcoin might have hit 100 on that run instead of 70. But do you think that CZ with Binance kind of like was doing that to them, saying, "Oh, I'll kill them over there because I know they aren't holding all this stuff"?
Okay, so it was no. Somebody came out. Somebody released the FTX balance sheet that got leaked.
I thought it was Binance.
No, but Binance, I think, commented on it.
Okay, they did comment.
Yeah, CZ commented on the balance sheet, or maybe said something. So the person that released the balance sheet certainly had motives, and they probably weren't. Maybe they were good to expose something that was clearly wrong. Maybe they were short. They got short before they exposed it.
Right.
And so I don't even know if we know who exposed it, if they ever figured that out. But then CZ, I don't remember what he said, but he said something that caused, actually, no, Binance at that point then said, look at that balance sheet, the FTX token, they did something on the Binance exchange with it. They said, we're no longer trading that, or we're no longer
I think he was selling
allowing.
his. I think they had a bunch of
that. Was it.
And they announced, we're selling it all.
Yeah. He won. Yep, you're right.
And then all of a sudden, the whole thing fell apart.
Yep. He announced that they were selling it. And yes, was that, he had cover to say, hey, I'm looking at this balance sheet and the logical thing is to sell it. But I agree with you that there were probably other motives that he will never ever share, or will never ever know.
I'm sure, but like you said, we can only presume. Hey, something else I always ask everybody is, let me ask you, forgot to ask earlier, what is Bitcoin? Jon West, what is your description of what is Bitcoin? I get a lot of different answers on this.
Yeah, I think my answer is boring. Bitcoin is just sound money. And sound money is the best at solving store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account. And that is a fundamental, foundational piece to a successful society in terms of wealth growth, fairness, just running the economy, people being content, people having peace, people having freedom. So after a while, when you start adding those things on, it doesn't get so boring. It's actually exciting, but it's kind of this, in a way, this boring thing that's really, really powerful and important, and gets rid of evil money printing.
So let's go to the next step on your question. That question, what is sound money? Most people don't have any idea.
Yeah.
They had never heard of that term.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're never taught this anymore. I don't even know if we were ever taught this, if people were ever taught this really that much. But,
I wasn't taught it.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly wasn't either. Money is always evaluated on 6 or 7 attributes. Scarcity is the most important. durability, fungibility, transportability, verifiable, those types of things. Sound money is the money that best implements those characteristics. And for thousands of years, that was gold. And now we have two sound monies in the world, Bitcoin and gold. And Bitcoin is technically, when you look at those attributes of how to evaluate money, Bitcoin is far superior to gold as a technology and a sound money. But that's what sound money is the money that best implements those fundamental attributes of money that have been in, those attributes have been in use and make sense for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Well, I guess you're saying money is U.S. money, U.S. dollars is not sound money.
No, because it's not scarce primarily. We've printed 80% of the dollars that exists since 2008. 80% of the dollars have been printed into existence since 2008. That is broken.
It's a lot of dollars.
That is not sound.
Well, you can't keep on at that rate, I wouldn't think. I see a lot of people now, I see the BRICS nations coming up with their own currency. I see Argentina and Brazil trading with their monies with each other. India and Russia trading with each other and their money. That's got to be affecting the dollars. I mean, there's so many of them, but they're not using them all. They're going to be coming back here sooner or later.
Yeah, it does affect it. I think it slowly affects it. I don't think it's people. People have been talking about the dollar losing its reserve currency status for decades. That's happening. It just happens really slow. And the dollar it's the king. It's mammoth. It's huge. And there's kind of two aspects to it. One is the dollar is a medium of exchange, serving as a reserve currency. And the other is, people holding treasuries, which is a good thing for the dollar. And people holding sovereign governments, holding treasuries is slowly going down. Using the dollar as a currency is actually going up, even though countries are starting to use other currencies for cross-border trade. Net, the use of the dollar is still rising, just not as fast.
Well, the DXY is up. I mean...
Oh, well, that's because of Powell. That's because of the Fed and the tightening.
Well, it was up before he started tightening, though. It's been up since...
Yeah.
For 4, 5, 6 months.
Oh, well, he started tightening longer ago than that. Yeah, that was a little a year ago.
Okay, well, then I'm out of it.
It's all based on the Fed. All assets are based on what the Fed does.
Well, today, I think he comes out with something comes out big today. What is it? The inflation numbers.
Came out yesterday.
Okay.
4.9.
4 point. Well, that's down.
0.1%.
Well, that's down. So let's see if he does it again, raises it again. We'll find out in a little bit. Right now, we're going to go to work for our sponsor, and we'll be right back with Jon West talking more Bitcoin. Stay tuned.
Grandpa, why do you have so much Bitcoin?
Well, it all started in the year 2023 when I attended a conference called BitBlockBoom.
What's BitBlockBoom, Grandpa?
It was a conference where people talked about Bitcoin. This was way back when we used something called the US dollar for money.
What? Bitcoin wasn't always the world's money?
If it weren't for great speakers at BitBlockBoom like Jimmy Song, Adam Curry, and Preston Pish, we'd all be living in pods and eating bugs. Instead, I was able to avoid fiat enslavement and secure generational wealth.
F***ing legend.
Be the legend your grandchildren deserve. Experience the best Bitcoin conference out there and join the Bitcoin revolution. BitBlockBoom, the only conference for true Bitcoin maximalists. Book your tickets today at bitblockboom.com and use the code BBB1 for a special discount.
And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Before we start the segment, I do want to make sure and tell you that I need you to share this show with your friends. Tell them about the video if you're watching us. Tell them about the audio if you're listening to us. But share the show with your friends and help them learn about Bitcoin, because it's something that's going to be real important. John, one of the questions I ask people is Bitcoin is money. And you answered that already. And what is Bitcoin? That it's sound money. But how much Bitcoin should I have? How much Bitcoin should it mean? I already have some, but if I'm just a guy sitting there on zero, how much should I be saying, wow, I need to get some Bitcoin? How much should I have?
Yep.
Should I have
I think that's easy to answer. Bitcoin is they call it the biggest asymmetric bet or investment that the world has ever seen. And what that means is, if Bitcoin is successful, Bitcoin has to get really big. The problem that Bitcoin is trying to solve, the money problem, is at least a $100 trillion problem. So whenever you analyze an investment, you look at the total addressable market. The total addressable market for money is easily 100 trillion. If Bitcoin solves that problem, that's 5 million per Bitcoin. Okay? So the first rule of investing is manage risk. Easy to manage risk with Bitcoin because it has so much upside if it's successful. So Bitcoin will still, if it's successful, it'll still easily 100x from here. If you allocate 1% of your wealth, you are replicating your wealth. It's very, very easy to start small, to invest small, to allocate. That's how you manage the risk. That's how you stomach the volatility. Because you don't care if you allocate 1% of your wealth, you don't care what it does. Let it do its crazy ride. And then, after people do 1%, they start learning Bitcoin, they start realizing it. I think most likely they allocate more. And the higher the price goes, the safer it becomes.
I always say if you get some skin in the game,
Yeah.
then you start wanting to learn what you got your money invested in, what you're doing.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, you see it.
Yep.
And once you see it, it's hard to see, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. But unless you have some skin in the game, a lot of people have no reason to even want to see it.
Yep.
And that's a pretty good point. At 1%, if you put 1% of your wealth in there, you're not really going to be missing that very much. I mean, if you've got 1%, if you got your wealth in the stock market, let's say,
Yep.
heck, you have days where you lose more than 1% and you don't go home crying that night.
Yep.
And it's really, at this point, I believe there's no chance of Bitcoin going to zero. I believe the chance of it going to $1 million is actually higher than it going to zero. So if it did drop, well, if it dropped 20%, you're talking 20% of 1%.
Yep.
So you're really, what you've got committed there and what your chances of losing are pretty slim.
Yep.
But as you've seen more than I have, because you've been in longer than I have even, over the long haul, Bitcoin goes up. And all these things we're seeing before.
Yep.
It's like cycles. People try to say bad things about Bitcoin, try to get it to lower the price, and all of a sudden goes through the moon, then it drops down. 4 years later, through the moon, drops down.
Yeah, it's very, very helpful to go through these bear cycles. Those are very useful.
I saw a story the other day coming out that the banks want to let people stop shorting bank stocks. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
You did? What did you I mean, I thought that was pretty interesting. So their banks are fundamentally not sound, and anything else is not sound. People are going to short to make money off of it, but they don't want you to be able to short this one thing.
Yeah, they temporarily suspended shorting during the 2008 financial crisis too. This has been done before, and people call it for what it is. You're trying to suppress the truth. The market is trying to find the truth. The market will find the truth, and
that's why shorting is kind of really a big feature.
Yeah. Yeah, and shorting should be fine. And shorting is fine. It's the market working, but government wants to control. They think they can control, so it's like, well, we need to make the world better, so outlaw shorting. But which is really just censorship. It's censoring the truth. It's suppressing the truth.
Well, I don't think that's anything unusual for any government in the world. Nope. I mean, people have a tendency to believe that that's only happens in other countries, but it's real obvious and evident to see that it happens anywhere. You can just watch the news, and you can watch one channel maybe and see something, go, that's huge news, and then you don't see it anywhere else. You're going, how come no one else is even talking about this? And just different things. I'm not saying anything particular, but it's not just one item over and over. I want to talk about, before this show, we were talking, and I was telling you about Marathon Mining has gone in partnership with a company called 02 that's backed by Abu Dhabi's Sovereign Wealth Fund. they're going to create the Middle East's first large-scale immersion Bitcoin mining operation. And for those, sorry, I made it so technical with the immersion, for people who don't understand what that is, but they're making the biggest Bitcoin mining facility in Abu Dhabi, over in that part of the world. What do you think about that story?
I think two aspects of that are very exciting. One, it's always very positive, very exciting when a government starts taking steps to move its reserves into Bitcoin. And so the Abu Dhabi government indirectly funding this and likely receiving some type of royalty from this is an act of moving their reserves into Bitcoin. So that's really cool. The second is the use of stranded energy. And so...
and they're running this mining facility with stranded energy.
Yeah. There's enough, as we were talking about earlier too, there's enough stranded energy in the world to do 7 times what the amount of energy that Bitcoin currently uses. And that energy Bitcoin actually does that has a huge impact on actually reducing CO2. If we are taking flared gas and turning it,
burning it up in the air.
Yep, it's wasting energy and it's producing CO2, and convert that to energy to power Bitcoin. Not only, more importantly, it makes the Bitcoin network, it makes our money secure. It gives us better sound money. A secondary effect of that is it actually makes better use of the resources that we have, and it reduces CO2. Those are wins, even though CO2 isn't as big of a problem as people think. But that's still a win.
Something that I also get out of that is you see now Biden talking about doing a 30% tax on people who use energy to mine Bitcoin. That's the only people that can pay the tax is Bitcoin miners. You can do anything else you want, waste it even, but you'll pay a 30% tax. So to me, that kind of is an indication of what could happen. If you say, okay, we're going to start taxing these people, it shows how easy it is to move it somewhere and have all that technology leave the U.S. Because it's not going to shut down Bitcoin mining. It's just going to, when China shut it down, that wasn't into Bitcoin. They just all moved to Texas and other states. Now he's going, we don't want to hear either. We want to let the Middle East have it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a bad idea, and it is an attack on Bitcoin that Bitcoiners will need to stop if it gets any further along. But yes,
it still has a long ways to go, and it's just right now flapping his lips, and just saying stuff. But to me, like I said, that shows a sign of what could actually happen. And now we do a lot of flared gas mining here in Texas,
and we had an attack on Bitcoin. Proposition 1751
went through the Senate and passed in the Senate, and that was had to do with mining, people who mining Bitcoin running on the grid here.
Yeah, it was trying to outlaw. There's a program in Texas where energy consumers can join a program to consume energy, but then they can give energy back to the grid and get paid for it to help the grid so that we can better address peak energy usage. Anybody can join this program. And this bill was trying to specifically outlaw Bitcoin from joining that program, which made no sense. It was an attack on Bitcoin, and we actually think it came from a nefarious source.
Well, that's very possible. It would have to be someone that had something to gain financially. And it really makes no sense. And when we come back from this word from our sponsor, we're going to dig into that a little bit because I do have a couple of questions on that.
Welcome to the Bitcoin Conference Challenge. Today, we're teleporting Bitcoiners like you to 2 different Bitcoin conferences, and you'll get to experience them firsthand. Let's take you to Conference A.
It's okay. Some interesting speakers and workshops, but there's a foul odor in the air. What is that smell?
Interesting. Now let's take you to Conference B.
Wow, this one is amazing. The atmosphere is electric, the speakers are great, and the workshops are fantastic. And the smell. It's so nice to fill your lungs with freedom.
Congratulations! You've just experienced the difference between a Bitcoin shitcoin conference and BitBlockBoom, the longest-running Bitcoin-only conference. Book your tickets today at bitblockboom.com and use the code BBB1 for a special discount.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I'm your host, Gary Leland, joined today by Jon West. Jon is a close friend from the Dallas area, trying to get more Dallas people on here. Now, Jon, we were talking about Texas Bitcoin mining in Bill 1751, thank you. How that was going to affect Bitcoin miners and only affect Bitcoin miners. So there are other people who use the Texas grid and are rewarded with this. And the basis of it is so when we have lack of power, the grid is already at peak performance. And you can just say, okay, we're diverting the Bitcoin from the energy from these companies, putting it on the grid instead of going, oh my gosh, we don't have enough power. Start fueling up. You know, it's already there. It's just diverted. That's why this is done.
Yeah, people don't understand that whatever 60% or something of electrical power is wasted. So when you build a grid, you have to build for a peak, but you're very seldom use that peak. So most of the time, because of transmission and because you're not at peak, you're generating power that's not used. Okay. And so then no one wants to build the peak because it's expensive. No one wants to pay for it. Well, Bitcoin is the most efficient grid stabilizer ever to come to Bitcoin, to electrical grids, because Bitcoin will sop up all of that excess energy and turn it into something valuable. Then when energy gets expensive, it starts to peak, Bitcoin will turn off. And when you have really hot temperatures or really cold temperatures, Bitcoin turns off and your energy grid problem is solved.
Then when it comes back down, there's no problem.
Turn it back on.
Turn it back on.
Yep.
And they can turn off a Bitcoin mining. Yeah, no matter how big it is, they can shut it down. And I guess that's part of the deal is they have to be able to shut down in a certain amount of time.
Yep. They're contractually obligated to shut down.
And so what are people complaining about in 1741? What is the big complaint?
Yeah, so this senator introduced a bill into the Senate of Texas saying, okay, we have this program that anybody can join, but we want to make it illegal for Bitcoin to actually, they can participate. We're really going to curtail the amount that they can participate, keep it under 10% or some number. So we want to make it illegal for Bitcoin to get any bigger in this. And the senator actually couldn't explain the reason for the bill.
Did she have like a working knowledge of Bitcoin? I mean,
no.
Yeah.
She didn't know, she couldn't articulate the value of the bill. And so it was an attack on Bitcoin. And you know, granted, even the Bitcoin miners in the state, you know, got together and said, okay, what's the worst that could happen if this bill passes? And it's like, yeah, it'll give us some short-term pain, but long-term, you know, this isn't going to be a problem. And so if it passes, it's not the end of the world. But as you know, I'm part of the Texas Blockchain Council too, and they do a great job of educating Texas government on Bitcoin, and have done a lot to bring Bitcoin to Texas and clear the way, clear the hurdles. So they had this, the Bitcoin miners had this discussion of, okay, do we just let this thing die because chances are it wasn't going to pass, or do we make a big deal out of it? And they chose to make a bigger deal out of it because it was an attack on Bitcoin, specifically an attack on Bitcoin. And so it was sending a message that don't attack Bitcoin in Texas. And so Texas Blockchain Council, Bitcoin miners did a whole bunch of lobbying, testifying down in Austin, rallying the troops, calling congressmen, senators, having a gathering on the Capitol lawn.
I went to that.
Yeah. Doing all sorts of things to raise awareness and show support for Bitcoin in Texas.
Yeah, actually, I just thought I should be there. I made a whole day of it just so I could be there for that day. So that has that gone through? I know that's gone through the Senate.
Yeah, it passed the Senate, and it's high confidence it's dead in the House.
Let's switch subjects one more time here. We got time for one more. Ordinals. Mm-hmm. Right now, the Bitcoin blockchain is kind of clogged up with these ordinals. What do you think of this?
I think
in like a minute.
it's good for Bitcoin. I think some of these things could be really, really, I think some of these guys are really smart to do this. I think they could be really, really valuable in the future. I don't think it'll last though. I think, Bitcoin space will eventually get really, really expensive because it's layer one and it'll just be big transactions. This helps Bitcoin, figure out high transaction fees. So it's good.
Yeah, good enough.
Yeah.
Now let's get into a little bit. Tell me about your Bitcoin blockchain consulting business. I mean, you help Fortune 100, 1,000 small software companies.
Yeah. So biggest company I helped was NCR, but it's really about going through their products and saying, how does Bitcoin apply? And with NCR, it was interesting because they do retail and banking. So it's digital banking. It's like buying, selling Bitcoin at digital banking app, at point of sale. They do a bunch of ATMs at ATM. It's looking at payments, Lightning Network. It's looking at loyalty. How do you incorporate Bitcoin into loyalty? It's those kind of things. And then I, advise Bitcoin companies, startups, small ones especially. But yeah, that's it.
Or how would they touch base with you on that?
Somebody reach out to me?
Yeah.
They can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, message me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active, but message me on Twitter, ATTN JDW, go to bitcoin101.fyi, find me there. Yeah.
And in all openness, I have stock in company you just mentioned, which I can't even think of just now, NCR. So I do hold NCR stock, and I'm down at the moment.
Yeah, you are, because they kind of took a right turn.
Yeah, they did take a right turn on me, so I need to get out of that and go ahead and take my loss on that. How about Bitcoin101.fyi? You just mentioned that.
Yeah, Bitcoin 101 is my ongoing education efforts to give people a chance to just learn the basics of Bitcoin 101. I also do that in conjunction with McKinney Bitcoin. With McKinney Bitcoin, it's focused in McKinney, north of Dallas, 250,000 people. We obviously think Bitcoin is a big deal. We think it's going to become a bigger and bigger deal, and we want local people, local business, and local charities to learn and apply Bitcoin. And Bitcoin 101 is one of the avenues that we use in that effort.
Well, you have a big meetup group there. I mean, you have a strong meetup group there. I've been to a couple of your events, and you always have good sponsors sponsor your events. So if you want some free food or free drink, a lot of times you can get that and learn about Bitcoin at the same time.
Yeah.
So I guess just go to meetup.com/McKinney, or what is it?
McKinney-Bitcoin, I think. But yeah, if you look for McKinney Bitcoin on meetup.com, you'll find it. Our efforts the meetup is mostly focused on personal people. And then there's activity outside the meetup where we're focusing on small business and charities. And we have this roadmap, these steps. We have these steps for small business to learn and adopt Bitcoin, these steps for charities, and then these steps for people. There's like 10 steps for people. There's 6 or 7 for small business, and there's like 3 or 4 for charities. And the funny part, sort of, is they start with rewards. All of them. Because Bitcoin rewards is applicable, but Bitcoin rewards is so easy for people to dip their toe into Bitcoin. It's easy for people. They don't have to make a Bitcoin purchasing decision. It's easy for business to offer Bitcoin rewards, to juice up their reward program, to not touch Bitcoin. And it's easier for charities to start building a long-term donation base. And so last year we talked to 200 businesses. And I thought going into it that as soon as I said the word Bitcoin, most of them would kick me out. These are small mom and pop merchants. And it would go something like I would walk in and say, hey, I want to sell your store credit into the local market. And the reason people will buy it is because they earn Bitcoin rewards. Well, it turns out over 95% of them were like, yes, tell me more. I'm interested.
Well, that's pretty cool. That you had you wouldn't have had that response.
No.
Maybe not even 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And it was like, until it got to $60,000, $70,000, a lot of people still didn't even know what it was or haven't heard. Now everybody's heard of it. But Jon, thanks for joining me on the show. I really do appreciate it. We'll have to get you back again. Running out of time, I'm sorry, but thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
And everybody visit Jon's sites, and especially if you're in the Dallas area, check out McKinney Bitcoin. It is a great meetup group. And we'll be right back after these words from our sponsor. So see you then. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I hope you enjoyed today's show with Jon West. We had a great episode, and I want to thank Stephanie from Biz TV here, my producer. Stephanie, thanks. Hey, what'd you think of Jon and on the show here?
I thought Jon was great. I love the most about his tip about the 1%, because that seems very attainable for someone like me that is more surviving than thriving.
Yeah.
So 1% seems feasible.
1% is a good point. And no one's going to, you literally aren't going to die if you lose 1%. It's like you're not going to jump. The whole market fell and people lost all their stocks. They probably start jumping out of skyscrapers like they did during the Depression. They lose 1%, they're just going to take an elevator ride to the bottom. So no one's going to be too worried. But I do want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank my producer again, Stephanie. And also want to make sure you know about the conference I run in Dallas and Austin, Texas. Jon talked about it earlier, the BitBlockBoom Bitcoin Conference. Please be sure and check that out at BitBlockBoom.com. This is our 6th year in Austin, Texas. And it's one of the, many people say, top Bitcoin conferences in the world. I also want to make sure you know about the book I helped write, Bitcoin and the American Dream. This is available at BitBlockBoom.com/books. Great book. If you have someone who you think needs to know about Bitcoin, buy them this copy of the book. It's about an hour and a half read. It's not too technical. My wife read it and she enjoyed it, and she is not real techie for sure. So be sure and check that out. Also want to make sure you know about the SatsCards store. SatsCardsShop.com. We sell SatsCards there. It's a great way to give Bitcoin. If you have a kid you want to give Bitcoin to as a Christmas present, as a stocking stuffer, or for a birthday present and a birthday card, check out SatsCardsShop.com. It's a great way to gift Bitcoin. One last thing I want to make sure you know about is our meetup groups in Dallas and Fort Worth. We have the BitBlockBoom meetup groups at meetup.com/BitBlockBoom. Tonight, we even have one in Fort Worth. End of the month, we have a barbecue in Dallas. So if you're in this area, you really need to check out our meetup group at meetup.com/BitBlockBoom and enjoy our socials and learn a little bit more about Bitcoin, or at least talk to people about Bitcoin. I do want to thank you for coming to today's show. I want to thank Jon again for appearing on the show. Great conversationalist. We'll have him back because we do have a lot more things we could talk about. And I said this earlier, and I want to say it again. Please share this show with your friends. As you can see, we're not selling Bitcoin. I don't want to sell you Bitcoin. I just want to teach you about Bitcoin. Someday, I truly believe everybody will need to own some Bitcoin. Everybody will be buying it, and I want you to know what it is so when that day happens. Thanks for joining me on this week's show, and we'll see you again.